Hello, Dr. Pat. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. It's been a wonderful day so far.
That's fantastic. I know. It's busy time, busy times. All right. So you have this amazing background. But before we dive into that, everybody has a story. And I want to know what's your story. How did you get to where you are today?
Oh, there's been so many. A story that has do you ever see those multi-level marketing, charts, like how you end up with like a million people. When I was growing up, I always played doctor, and I never played the sick person. I never died or anything else like that. So when I'm going back to where, I would experiment in my own head because I was naturally very, very talented in science. I would do things like go outside without my jacket on and eat a popsicle during the winter because I thought if I can equalize the temperature inside my body with the outside, then I would never get cold. So it was like one of those childhood experiments as a, child scientist. And so I've always excelled at that, and I always wanted to help people. I went to college, and after I graduated with my undergraduate degree, I started going to business school and really hated that. And so I went back to school, and when I did that, I had these like student intern things to do. And I realized my one advisor told me I should be a teacher, so I was interning for 9-year-olds. And I realized I probably would be in jail right now if that was the case. Because I can remember the first day I walked in there, these kids are supposed to be normal, and they're jumping up and down on their desk. And I said, well, you guys, how do you feel about staying in 4th grade for the rest of your life? Because that's what's going to happen if you don't sit down. And now. And I turned the light off. And they just went, I think we should listen to her. And then I worked at University of Michigan Hospital as a patient relations advocate. And what I did is I went around to see people and see how they were doing. It's like, hey, is there anything else that you need? You just checked in, like it was a hotel. And I, did that for a while. And I needed to have so many visits in order to get my A for my internship for that. And I went into the cancer ward one day, and I was walking down, this guy shuffling towards me, and I said to him, tell me. And I said, I don't think I've met you before. And he goes, and you're never going to see me again. I'm going to be dead in 6 weeks. And I just went, really? And so he said, yes, they told me that the cancer I have is spread. They can't do anything for me. I thought it was such a horrible thing to tell somebody. It's just like, and I said, well, my answer to him was, and I said, if it was me, I said, I'd be out of here. And he said, really? I said, yeah, if it was me and I had 6 weeks to live, I'd go do whatever I wanted to do, when I wanted to do it, how I wanted to do it, and I'd get out of here. Look at the color of these walls. They're disgusting. It's like puke green. And so, he just said to me, he goes, what's your name? And I said, oh, my name's Patricia. And, then I went and I said, if there's anything I can do, if you just call down today on a buzzer, I can bring it up to you if you need a toothbrush or something like that, And I said, and I wish you a lot of luck. And I walked away. And so at the end of the day, I was walking by my boss's office, and she said, Patricia, in here right now. And she goes, who's the guy you're talking to in the cancer ward? And I said, I don't know. And I said, he just told me he had 6 weeks to live, and she said, well, great. She goes, he left the hospital. And he said, you're the last person who talked to him. And I just went, oh, and, in my head, I'm going, yay,
yeah.
And she said, you can't do that. And she said, you have enough credits at not including him to get your A for your independent study. So I'm going to let you out of here a week early. So I said, okay. And then I was telling my friend who said to me, you've got to become a chiropractor. And I said, who wants to be a chiropractor? My dad always said they're quacks. And, and dismissed that. I was waiting on tables, hurt my shoulder, decided maybe I should go check out chiropractic. And so I went into this chiropractor's office that was famous in Ann Arbor, Michigan. And I thought, if he can do it, so can I. I registered for school and I never looked back. And I had really wonderful mentors that, that were so far ahead of their time. I mean, 1982, somebody was telling me never to have margarine because it's carcinogenic because of the double bond. That's not cis and trans, and and things like that. And I just took that to heart, and it changed my immediate health, changed my mindset about how I did the rest of my life, about what I could accomplish and what I couldn't accomplish. And I decided that I was out on a mission to get sick people well and well people to maintain their wellness. And if they didn't know how to do that, I'm the girl to ask, because I help people have those breakthroughs.
Wow. So that's awesome. So are you still a practicing chiropractor?
No.
No?
What I do is I mentor and I coach is my primary. I do them together because I think so many coaches, nothing personal against any of you guys, but so many coaches really don't, address the leader part of helping somebody. And I think people need to have, that mentor who leads by example, who has done it before. I have done everything I've ever told any of my patients to do. And I used to, when I do kinesiology and muscle testing, if I gave somebody a supplement to test them on to get a subclinical level of like, what should you take on this, or should you take it, I would take it myself. So I have tasted every disgusting vitamin that, any of my patients I had to give them to, when I had my office. And so now I mentor and coach, and I'm looking to build that business because I feel like I can impact a lot more people's lives who can then impact other people's lives. So I have a free course that, in webinar that I do, that's called Motivational Biohacks in mini masterclass. And then I have an online course that leads into called Be Stronger. And what you're stronger than medicine. So you sit your mindset. And when you have the mindset plus those wellness initiatives, you can accomplish anything, whether it's business, whether it's home, whether it's relationships. You can do anything, when you've got the right mindset and you have the good self-talk, because we know that self-talk can undo a lot of things that you already have done to improve your health, because you're up at 4 o'clock in the morning and you never had any melatonin surge during the night, so you didn't sleep well. And that's when you repair and revitalize for the future. So you've got to have those things in place.
I love it. And I love how you say you want to help other coaches so that they can make an impact on more people too.
Yeah.
That's really, what a great mission. Yeah. What a great mission. So you're a best-selling author of the book, Why? Are You Sick, Fat, and Tired? So talk about that. What led you to write that book, and elaborate more on that title?
Well,
it's catchy.
Well, on the woo-woo part of that, I was meeting a girlfriend of mine. I sold my business, and I moved to Boston, and I was meeting a girlfriend of mine who needed my couch to sleep on while she was in this conference for 4 or 5 days. And I met her on the first night. She goes, you got to go in there. There's this guy who's reading poems. And this woman across from him had this experience where he told her that she was going to outlive these husbands of hers, and 2 of them had died already. So when I went, and the universe has it, this woman who he told that to was directly across from him 8 years later. And so I said to her, I'll watch your booth. You go talk to him. My girlfriend, she said, you're so good at this. And I said, I'll get people's names, their addresses, their phone numbers, how many kids they have, when their birthdays are, and their emails and everything. You go over there, because you can't give that guy that much strength, and you can't give him that much power. And then, so when she came in, she goes, thank you so much. And she goes, you saved my life. And I went, I don't think I saved your life. I said, but now you can go back to work. And I decided, I'm going to see what this guy's all about. So the first thing I did when I sat down, she said, your days, lady, of healing one-to-one are over. And I just went, how could he possibly know anything about me? And he goes, and you're going to write a book. And when you write this book, you're going to have the ability, this book can help people, extend their lives and live better. And I'm going, I don't think I'm going to write a book. I'm retired. I mean, I'm not doing this stuff anymore. And at the time I was modeling. So it was like, I was having so much fun doing something so totally, 180 degrees the opposite way.
Yeah.
So, right. So I left, and, I told, and the last thing he told me, he said, you have a gift that you're not using, and you have to use this gift. And the gift is that you have the ability to kind of tune into people. And that was, when he said that, he really caught my attention. As so many times I told people, I said, so did you have fried food last night? or something like that when I had my practice. And they went, Dr. Pat, were you looking in my window? Were you at the restaurant last night? And I had that happen to me so many times. At 11 years old, did you fall off a horse? They're going like, how do you know that? And I just went, whatever. It's a gift that, I've been given. So I use it so I can help people, be better and they can heal faster. So, at any rate, he tells me to write this book and I'm like, crazy person, no way. And so I get up, about 8 years later in the middle of the night. And I said, I know exactly what I'm going to write about. And so I decided to take all my questionnaires, consolidate them so people could have a concise place to go because their bodies and their health are like a Swiss watch. And when one piece doesn't work, another piece doesn't work. So I thought, take the system surveys that doctors are supposed to ask you about in depth that don't, and you can answer them. You can see where to start your health journey. You can see it's a guidebook, it's a workbook, it's an advocating tool so you know where you're stuck. Then you know where you've got to put your time, energy, and money to move forward. So you're no longer trying to have the horse push the cart, and you know what your foundation is. Because that's important in figuring out how to get someplace faster because there's no magic pill to do that. So that's how the book came about. And I just started piecing stuff together and I had no clue how to write a book. and I wanted to make sure that people who are 11 years old could read it and understand it. So I hired a friend's son to look at it. And he got $1 for every word that he highlighted. And he gave me a word that he could understand that meant the same thing. So I thought, okay, that's one thing out of the way. And then I had more of it done. So the book title was like something so totally different. And I was talking to my sister who said, well, sick, fat, tired. Do you know how many people, have you looked on TV? Do you know how many people are sick, fat, and tired? And I said, but the question is not that they are, because they can see that looking in a mirror, basically. And I said, but you don't see why. And the question is, why is it? Because if you know why, then you can go to the root problem. It's like, where's that weakest link? Is it genetic? And if it's genetic, how do I change my epigenetics around my environment so that it's stronger and I have more of a stable base? So that if something does express itself in a gene pool, it expresses itself in a lesser extent. Your eyes on the prize. And you can watch it as opposed to one day waking up and saying like, oh my God, I'm a statistic today because I died of a heart attack, which is the statistic of 75 men. 75% of men, according to the American Heart Association, don't know they have heart disease until they die. So right. That's a really statistic I'm not interested in experiencing, and I don't really want anybody else to experience. So when I was doing this book, somebody said to me, in a business group I was in, she goes, I'm not sick, I'm not fat, I'm not tired. Why in the heck would I ever want to buy your book? And I said, well, the reason you want to buy my book, I said, is because you know if you're tired and you know if you're not. So bravo for you that you're so energetic and you have tons of energy. God bless you. And I said, and you might know if you're fat because you can look in a mirror. You can see how your clothes are fitting you. Are you starting to wear stretchy clothes or as opposed to jeans? Because if you're doing that, then you're growing into your clothes. It's like being a goldfish in a bigger bowl. Right. But you don't know if you're sick. You don't know what's underlying the surface. It's like that proverbial iceberg. The Titanic didn't know there was an iceberg there. They could see it, but they didn't know how far underneath the water it was festering and it was growing. That slashed the side of it out and it sunk the Titanic. It does the same thing to us when we don't pay attention to our health. There's things that are lurking below the surface. So if you know where your weakest link is, you can put time, energy, money, and targeted supplementation and do things now before it becomes a huge event and you are a burden to yourself, not only to yourself, but to your family and friends. Because nobody ever had that thought process when you were a kid going like, oh, when I grow up, I want a chronic illness and disease because it's in my family. So, I've never had one person ever tell me that, and 38 years of practicing and helping people live better, healthier, and happier. And so that's the reason for the book. The book puts things in a chronological order. It's well organized and puts things in order. So when you get to the questionnaire, you can see where you're at. And if you go and take the questionnaire, you can talk to me or you can talk to somebody else. they can tell you exactly like, hey, we got to pay attention to this. I don't like to guess on people's health. So this is my first test. And I have a couple other tests that I do to get a big picture. And then I order blood workup and biomarkers and, microbiomes and things like that. So you got to know what you're dealing with first before you go out and start spending thousands of dollars for no apparent reason. It'd be much more fun to have a girls' weekend, in Spain or something like that, than it would be to figure out like, oh, I've got to go to the heart center and do another stress test, and or take medications that for one person, they're helpful, and the next person, they're poison.
Right. So I'm curious. So back to when you were starting, you said you took the questionnaires, and that was when you were working with your patients, and you took that information and was able to compile it to give people kind of a roadmap.
To make one questionnaire from many questionnaires, to make one questionnaire so that, it's just like I wasn't giving somebody this person on a gut questionnaire. So I have general surveys to figure out, do you got a problem? And where's the most likely cause for that problem? Is it in cell-to-cell communication, or is it in micronutrient transport within the body? Or where are those heavy metals at anyway? And what's going on with your gut? And what's going on with your liver, and how come the liver's not detoxifying things right and keeps on throwing in your gut, and your gut keeps on, because it's damaged, keeps on sending it back to the liver, so it eventually ends up, being settled in blood, brain, bone, or fat. And so every fat cell in your body has some level of toxin, and every fat cell in your body is a teeny weeny endocrine organ. And so you want, it's just like, so when you're looking at why am I suddenly bloated? Why do I suddenly have my waistline going, bigger? How come I'm not handling hormones? Because every bit of food that you're eating is either feeding a disease or you're living your life and fixing it. And so all food affects you hormonally. So if you know that, then you can make better choices about what you put in your body. And no two people are alike. So you really, even though you're in one family, you have not all family members, if they have cardiovascular disease as a genetic link, doesn't mean that everybody in the family is going to have cardiovascular disease. It just depends on how you're expressing yourself in your environment. Like, what are you breathing? What are you eating? What are you drinking? What accident have you been in? Then all those things that come together all have one thing in common, and that's inflammation. So where's that inflammation, and how deep is it? And how do I get rid of it?
So you mentioned earlier, I'm just taking a note here because I don't want to forget to ask you about this. You mentioned earlier about how I do that while I'm talking to people. So, follow-up questions. You talked about DNA and how... Right. Okay, so I have a genetic, let me use myself as an example.
Okay.
So in my family, my grandmother died of bladder cancer. My mother has already had stage 0 bladder cancer. And now I am starting to show signs that I could be on that path. Okay. Don't have any reason to be alarmed, but because of my age, and knowing that history, my family history, in that sort of circumstance, you mentioned how there's things that you may be able to do to change that course. Well, so in a situation like that, when you're predisposed to something that is hereditary, how would you be able to shift that? I mean, I know obviously everybody is different, but is there some sort of broad explanation of how that would work?
Fix your gut, change your life.
It comes down to the gut. Okay.
Because all the food that you eat is either fixing a problem and maintaining good health, or it's causing a disease. So if you know that certain foods have hidden issues in them, like drinking water from plastic that's been sitting in the sun, and then cools down and sitting in the sun. If you know that using, putting stuff in a microwave or getting things at high temperature, if you know that grilling at high temperature creates these, free radicals, then your weakest link is your urinary bladder. So how can I tonify that? How can I make my bladder better? So you got to go well, how do you get to the bladder to begin with? It starts with what you put in your mouth and what you drink. So if you're looking, it's I would tell you never eat sugar. And I would tell that to anybody, doesn't matter what, because sugar creates inflammation. And if you have inflammation and whatever you're eating and the liver can't detoxify correctly, it will put it in your weakest link. So it's just like, and the endothelial cell in the bladder, has to be nurtured also. So why is it, and what nerve goes to the bladder area, like from the back? Because the brain is the master controller and coordinates all functions of the body. And so it comes down the spine, goes out to the body, and goes to every cell, every organ, every tissue in the body. So is there something going on in how that's communicating, telling the rest of the body to, like how it's talking to cells, or it's telling cells to detoxify and it's not? So when it gets there, there's too much mucus. When you have phlegm and you ask people what color is the phlegm, they look at me like I'm crazy sometimes. They go, what do you mean? I said, well, you always have clear phlegm, like if you blow your nose, right? And it's just like, that there's inflammation brewing when the color of the phlegm changes. And what happens to the phlegm? It congeals. So if you've got things that are creating, or that you're doing in your diet that are creating mucus, it's going to, like, where is that mucus going? And how come it's staying in the bladder too long? And maybe there's not enough, bacteria in it to get rid of that. So you've got to figure out what's the immediate picture look like, and what can I do to support myself? So because your grandmother gave you a story, and your mother gave you a story, but there's always something that you can do. But you've got to first always go back to what's what you're eating, what's going on in the gut, how are you digesting and breaking down those micronutrients, and is there an issue with the gut lining that the food gets sucked into the blood beforehand? Because all toxins, when the liver can't handle them anymore, go to blood, brain, bone, and fat. And your fatty tissues are breast. I mean, look at the incidence of breast cancer, that we never had before, years ago. It's just like, do you drink water from a plastic bottle? It's just like, you might not want to do that, especially if you buy them at, outside of a grocery store. They have a pellet. Outside a pellet, right? Okay,
wait. So this is supposed to be one of the safe plastics. Is there no safe plastics?
Well, BPA plastics are okay. Because they took.
So I'm okay drinking out of my plastic bottle.
Yeah. And so, because
I literally
Well, the other thing to be mindful of is where you source your water, because where you source your water, if you get it from the tap, you're drinking neurotoxins that are carcinogenic. And if it's just what I tell people to do is go, just look at the ingredients. If you can't pronounce something, you probably shouldn't buy it. And if you can't, and if you do buy it, you can look up what that ingredient is. You don't need to know what is methyl stearate. You don't need to know what that is. You need to know the side effects of methyl stearate, because it isn't maybe one dose that you get that's going to do something, because your body should be taking care of those toxins. But when your body gets overwhelmed from those toxins, whether it's gardening chemicals, whether it's somebody down the street spraying Roundup on their grass to get rid of the weeds because they don't want to put Dawn and white vinegar in water and spray it, which is not toxic to the environment. It's just like when I see somebody, I saw an elderly gentleman when I was in Florida doing clinical rounds at a chiropractic college down there a couple of years ago. And he was outside spraying, and I was with my dog, and I started walking across the street away from him. I go, what are you spraying? What's in that container? He goes, Roundup. He had this beautiful southern accent, Roundup. And I said to him, it's carcinogenic. You know that, right? He goes, well, only if you breathe it. I said, I don't see a mask on your face. I said, and I go, and there's at least 2 feet between the spray. I said, in the grass. I said, and then you got a stream over there, so you have a water supply that you're polluting. And I go, oh, look are those your daughters or are those your granddaughters? Because they're running in the grass that you just got done spraying. And the skin absorbs 65% of whatever you put on it. So I said, do you think you might want to use vinegar and Dawn? another choice. So I go, and you stop, polluting yourself. People don't think about those things.
No, they don't.
Those plugins, that people put in their houses to smell good, they're carcinogenic. Read
Oh
it.
my
It's
gosh.
it's like, don't believe me. Go look it up. They're carcinogenic. The company that I'm thinking of immediately, it starts with a G and ends in the E. It's just like, and then the dryer sheets, they have, it's just like, they're carcinogenic. You're breathing that in.
Oh my gosh.
The incidence of lung cancer in this country has skyrocketed. And in the last 2 years, cancer has tripled, and it's like, this blows me away. We've got to pay attention and treat our bodies like temples, and what we put in them, what we think, and how what we do with our posture. When I saw it last summer, I filled in for a friend of mine in his office, and this kid came in. It was a new patient. He was 22 years old. And he couldn't bend over farther than to touch his mid-thigh. He was 22. I go, what do you do? He's a computer genius thing. I said, you got to move. If you don't move, you're going to die. And when I was in my office, I would never say something like that when I first started out. But my second patient ever, that was her line. We called her grandma. And she said, honey, you don't move, you're going to die. I said, so what do you do for exercise? She goes, I take my Dixie cup out and I go out and I water my garden. I said, well, where's your garden? She goes, in the backyard. She said, but I don't walk around my neighborhood. This is in Georgia in 1982. She goes, I don't walk around my neighborhood anymore. It's turning bad. She says, so I'm scared to go walk down the street. So I need to get my exercise every day. So I take my Dixie cup and I go out and I water my garden. And I said, I think she's going to say she's got 20 plants or something like that. And I said, how many plants do you have? She said, I have 150. And she goes, Dr. Pat.
So she's using a Dixie cup, and so she's got to walk back and forth.
Back and forth. So, I'm going 300 times out there. It's got to be at least equal to a quarter of a mile for a woman who was like 75 years old or 92 years old.
Yeah.
92.
Wow.
And so I was like, wow. So I stole that line from her, and I've used it for all the years I've been in practice, and when people tell me they don't feel like exercising, well, I don't feel like exercise. Walk as fast as you can, as far as you can, for as long as you can, every day, and it's just like, just take 30 minutes. You can't sit at a computer. Go out and hug a tree. Go smile at somebody. Find something nice to say to anybody that you encounter. I mean, how's that for a different mindset? As opposed to saying, well, I don't like you because you don't think the same way as I do. Who cares? What you care about is that we're all going down the same path together. And if you raise that consciousness to that, then we're all in the same boat. You better have the oar. And we're all doing the same thing at the same time, moving in that direction away from, chaos into mental freedom.
So, in summary, you are what you eat.
Yeah. Well, no.
Well,
that's not exactly true.
Okay.
You are what you have.
Eat.
You are what you have the ability to absorb. So if your gut's in good health, you will absorb all your micronutrients when you need to absorb your micronutrients. If your gut's not in good order, then it's going to have a mishap, and you might be absorbing food that's whole, that sets you up that eventually sets you up for gluten sensitivities and other autoimmune diseases. So having the gut in good working order, I'm a Chinese physician also. So the Chinese always say, if your gut's healthy, then you're healthy. You have a better chance, at handling things that come your way. But I help people sort it out, because sometimes it's like people don't like to ask for help, so I don't tell anybody, but you can ask me, you can tell me anything you want to tell me that doesn't go beyond my ears, or my immediate environment. But you have to.
Well, the thing is, we may feel healthy, and like for me, no, I'm not sick, fat, or tired. But that doesn't mean that there isn't anything going on underneath.
Well, let's say one thing about that sick part. According to, the typical dictionary, like Webster's, Merriam-Webster's dictionary, they say that health is when your organs are functioning 100% of the time. So what the reality is that you don't know that.
We don't.
And so
how would you?
And the WHO, World Health Organization, it's one of the few things that I would say that when this happened and they gave this definition and they were pressed to give the definition for that, they actually did a good job. So they say that it is not the absence of disease or infirmities. And it's not something you aspire to. Oh, I'm going to have good health, because people think they're healthy. They're taking meds and they have normal blood values now. If you're taking a med, you're not healthy. And
right.
so you have some chemistry that's going on that's not correct. So people have that misnomer, and they're taught to believe in that, and become compliant. It's like, well, my blood pressure now is normal because I'm taking meds. Well, why did you have bad blood pressure in the first place?
Right.
That's
right.
There's a lot of reasons for that, and it's like people who smoke, they say like, oh, when I eat cabbage, it's just like, it bothers my gut. Well, how about that? Because you smoke, you have heat in your stomach and you're not digesting any of your food. And it's how about that sugar drink that you drink, like a whole 32 ounce of it every day? You're polluting your body.
Right.
And that's just like,
right.
So you've got to start, that mindset shift about that has to happen with some really good positive mental attitude, and that, and saying like, well, how do I piece that together so I can have the breakthrough that I need, and get the breakthrough I need and be able to move past that. So it's a non-event.
Yeah.
It's possible.
Well, I always like to share the story about my father. He was given 3 months to live. Interestingly enough, his cancer started from his bladder, and he's my stepfather. I call him my father because he raised me since I was 3. So he was given 3 months to live. And at the same time, he was diagnosed with borderline diabetes. So he eliminated sugar from his diet, and he lived 16 years.
Well, the sugar's a big thing, but I'm going to tell you, if your mother has the bladder cancer and he has the bladder cancer, then something in the environment of that house is incorrect.
Right. Well, they were both smokers.
Well, there's something in the environment in that particular house. Two people who don't have the genetic same makeup, ending with the same thing, they have to do that. I had a patient whose husband just died. She was a big Cam Neely fan in hockey. Cam Neely used to play for the Bruins. And this woman had Boston Bruin, earrings, sweaters, necklaces. She had everything Boston Bruin. And if it was Cam Neely, she had Cam's shirt, And she, came in to see me, and, someone said, like, you should see this woman. And I did. And I said to her, after the third time I saw her, because I always start out like, let me get to know your body a little bit better. I said, you got something bigger going on than I can deal with, and I said, you need to go get a CAT scan. And I sent her out for a CAT scan. She had 32 cancer lesions within her body. She was dead in 3 weeks. And,
oh my God.
And so, but her husband, interesting enough, her husband died of the exact same cancer just before her, around 4 months. But she had the best attitude I've ever seen anybody have. He died. He's in a good place. He's watching over me. She goes, I'm going to go see him pretty soon. She didn't know how soon she was really going to get there. But so when I saw that, and you would not necessarily see those lesions on an x-ray because some of them were really small, but you could see the speckles and the CAT scan of her. That was really interesting to me. That's when I'm like, wow, living on Cape Cod, that's where my office is at. I need to get off this Cape because there was a military base and they dumped a lot of stuff in the water supply. There was this really pretty lake, and there was a house. I went, God, I love this house. I said, why is it so cheap? And so I said, real estate agent, you got to disclose that. What's going on here? What's going on with the water? And she goes, nobody has ever asked that question. I said, well, find out what's going on with the water. I want to see water samples. I want to see the result of it. Highly carcinogenic. They had fuel from the planes that seeped into the ground, and those petrochemicals were in it. Every person in that area ended up with cancer. I'm going, I don't want to live on Cape Cod ever again. And that's when I started making a plan to sell my practice and move. Because I'm going, I'm not dying from this. It's like, and I have a very good immune system, and we have longevity in my family. I have an aunt that lived to be like 107 or 110, something like that. My mother died at 95, not because she was sick, but she died because she had an accident where she hit her head and they didn't secure her wheelchair. But at 95, she was going to the eye doctor so she could get injections for macular degeneration, so she didn't have to wear glasses when she read. That was her big goal in life at that point in time. I go, if you want to go do that, I'll pay for the cab, just so that you can go get there and go do that, And then she had this accident, and which like she survived. I mean, like who survives, having 3 subdural
Yeah.
hematomas, 10 months, and,
Wow.
and because they didn't get her to the hospital, a hospital for head trauma right away, because the guy took her to the wrong hospital. It's just like, her hematomas started to spread and she ended up having a stroke. But it was just, I'm thinking like, the pieces of the puzzle are there. We just have to say what piece, like this is the piece that I'm missing. I know that I'm suddenly not feeling good. I'm not digesting my food well anymore. Like, how has your health been in the last 2 years? Has it changed? Has your weight changed? Do you take over-the-counter drugs in order to get rid of headaches? There's a reason why you got a headache. Start asking,
Right.
why?
Right.
Why do I have this stuff going on? And for you, it's just like, aren't you lucky we're having this conversation today, and talking about the bladder, because the bladder's got to have certain, like certain things in it. So it's as far as like nutrients, and, probiotics, bacteria that's supposed to be there that do its job. It's like, where's the glitch? So the
Right.
idea is to find out what organ system in this book, Why You're Sick, Fat, and Tired, because, so that you can find out where's that, what can I do? What are my possibilities? And so I help people realize those possibilities, and then I show them a path that they can go down, and it's just like, this is how I work with people, and it's, and it's fun. And seeing somebody have like a breakthrough that's been holding them back, a belief system from childhood, about how they heard their parents argue about money or about relationships. They watch their parents never have a good relationship, and they carry that into this life, and they bury that deep in their body. You don't want that crap in your body anymore. You want to get rid of it. You want to go through your life on your own terms. So that's, it's just like that whole big piece of the puzzle for me is where I share my heart and I share my knowledge. And so like, because I can read in between the lines really well. My ex-husband always told me I should have been an attorney. Because I was like, I go, that doesn't make sense. Because if something doesn't make sense to me, I can say it. That doesn't make,
I think you're better off. I think you're better off doing what you're doing because you're making a much more positive impact than attorneys can do.
Oh, for sure. If I was an attorney, I'd have to support women's causes. That would be like my thing. But I like, it's just that logical thinking of how do you do the right side and left side of your brain. It's just like, I always just say like, that doesn't make sense. So when someone tells me my doctor said this, that doesn't make sense. You should go see somebody else. I tell my patients that all the time. You don't walk out. You should always get 2 or 3 opinions and then go and then ask them what, when, where, why, and how. And if you don't know the questions to ask, I will help you advocate, and I'll advocate for you, and I'll give you the questions to ask. So you say, here's a piece of paper, answer these questions. Can I record this? And so that you get the information that you need, because if you don't ask the right question, you're not going to get the right answer. And if you're not going to get the right answer, then, it's just like you're going to be making decisions about your health and about your family and about the rest of your life based upon a poor explanation of what's going on. Can you hear that? The guy outside?
It's okay.
I'm thinking like, did they kind of, just like I already shooed them away from here once today. They're blowing debris in the car. Anyway, neither here nor there. But my goal is to really help people get a handle on that. They let's raise your consciousness with a hand. What are your possibilities?
Right.
And it's just like, and how do I move forward in that to make sense? Whether it's with me or with somebody else, it doesn't matter to me. I'm there to serve.
I love it. I love it. This has been amazing and so educational. Dr. Pat, is there anything else that you want to share with the audience today?
Well, if I gave anybody tidbits, like, things that you could do, is like, drink cold water. You want to drink enough water, because every 5 pillars of health that I teach, which are proper nutrition and diet, they have to go together, proper exercise, proper sleep, positive mental attitude and positive mindset, and a properly functioning nervous system, which means that you have to have a good house to fix that, so you have to have proper posture. So every one of those 5 pillars that I teach in my course, Be Stronger, is also, every one of them needs hydration. So if you don't have enough hydration in your body, then it's like you're dehydrated, and you're kind of like, it's like your car. I'm running my car on 3 quarts of oil instead of 6 or 5 or whatever it needs. It's going to break at some point in time. Same thing for your body. So the equation for the water is 50% of your body weight in ounces. So if you weigh 100 pounds, you would drink 50 ounces of water. If you hate the taste of water, put lemon or lime in it. You know, something like that. Not orange though. For that's another podcast. You know, so you would do that. And if you have a tendency to say, well, it makes me bloated. Well, that's because you're swallowing air. The best way to pass that up is to drink it out of a straw. And then you won't have that problem and that. But
Nice.
always hydrate. Do good, have fun, you know, and thrive.
Love it. Dr. Pat, thank you so much for joining us today. This has been amazing. And I will make sure I put in the show notes how to reach you.
Wonderful. Wonderful.
All right. Take care. Thank you.
All right.